Hey everybody, how y'all doing? So a couple housekeeping things. First of all, I know a lot of Ames police are here. I am in the 30-minute zone, so I will keep this brief. The other thing is that parents, I know your kids have to go home, so I will keep this brief. But I just wanted to get those things out of here. So it's my nerves. I've had to rewrite this speech about 5 times, and sitting down here listening to everybody before me, I've had to write it again. So Eric, where's Eric at? Thank you. That's the speech. Good night. This is my second speech of the day. Earlier today, I spoke to the Ames Rotary, so some people have heard some of the things that I may say tonight, and I'm going to try to keep it fresh for them as well. And I'm a movie person, so you'll hear a couple movie references in here, some for the kids that I didn't know there were going to be kids here, but I'm glad I put that one in there, and then some other ones as well. But a movie that I like, and my buddy Brandon's out here, I think he watched that movie with me, Finding Forrester. If anybody remembers that, Sean Connery. And the thing about that movie and why I'm starting with that is because the young man in that movie, he started with someone else's words to find his own. And today, there's been a lot of starting with Martin Luther King's words to find our own. And so that's where I will begin. This speech is called The Path. Earlier, my speech was called Driven, Not Brave, and I'll get to that a little bit, but The Path. And I was supposed to get a haircut. I was supposed to get freshened up for this. Weather changed everything, so thank you for having me out here in this coldest blizzard ever. I've enjoyed being back. It's been a while. But Martin said, make a career of humanity. Commit yourself to the noble struggle for equal rights. You'll make a better person of yourself, a greater nation of your country, and a finer world to live in. Mayor John took one of my things about the caucus, so I'll just leave that there. Another definition that I have in here is the definition of the word honor. To honor someone is to value him highly or bestow value upon him or her. The Iowa caucus is tonight. You chose to be here to listen to me. I thank you. Okay, I had that in there. Today, we honor Martin Luther King Jr. because we see value in him. I am here tonight speaking to you because someone saw value in me. I represent the Trice name because someone put a value on that, and that was Ames. I am no politician. I am no Fortune 500 CEO. I am no athlete, not an entrepreneur or role model. I'm a person trying to do more than my part. Adults, I told you I had one in here for the kids. You may think this is the cheesiest thing, but kids, do you all remember the movie Robots? Well, you don't remember Robots? You do. So what was the main inventor's name? I'm going to give what is it? Mr. Bigweld. What did Mr. Bigweld say in there? Do you remember? What was his motto? See a need, fill a need. Dr. King saw a need and felt it was his duty to fulfill it. By fulfilling that need in society, he filled a gap in front of himself. We look back and say, I wish I would have done this, or I wish I would have done that. I wish I would have played football at Iowa State. I wish I would have played under the lights of Jack Trice Stadium. I was recruited here in 1998 by Gene Smith, who I still talk with. A great man, a great mentor, and he happens to also be from Cleveland, where I'm from. And so we talk about that Cleveland connection. But I was about 5 inches too small and about 75, 80, maybe even 100 pounds too light to play a lineman here. Ohio's small ball. But I do wish I would have done that to contribute. But again, that was not my path. In 1988, Christopher Bennett created the Jack Trice Memorial Statue. That's the original statue from 1988 that you see. And what you see with that statue and that memorial is you see Jack holding his letter in his hands. You see scholarly books on the bench next to him. And you see his football cleats behind him because he was a student. He was a student first, and that's what he came here to do because he wanted to go back down south and teach ex-slaves how to sharecrop. He wanted to learn and take what he got from animal husbandry here in Ames, Iowa, and take that with him down south where his parents were born, where his parents were slaves. My path, again, was as a student. Another movie reference for you, and this is for people my age, maybe a little older. Um, my path was not a direct one. People would call me the Van Wilder of Iowa State. It took me a little while. In my bio, you'll see that I did continue to get my degree from Iowa State. I did go on to get my master's from Grand Canyon University in Phoenix, where I live. 55-degree difference between Phoenix and here right now. And I did go on to get a diversity, equity, and inclusion certificate from Cornell. So I have tried to do my part and do more than my part. So I've just begun to honor Dr. King and Jack Trice, and I'm not stopping that yet. They're expecting me to do big things. I agreed to be here for 2 reasons today. One, I love to talk. So if you know me, you know I can talk about anything for a long time, and I like to listen and hear myself speak. Sometimes I have to listen before I speak. But also was that it was an honor to be asked to be here in front of you, you up there, you down here. It was an honor to be asked. I lived in Iowa from 2008 to 2010, so I became a resident of Iowa. It became home to me. It's where I became an adult. And I think I got that later in here, but I skipped it and wanted to say it now, because it was important for me to get indoctrinated into this community, because they brought me in. The friends became family, vice versa. This is a hard day for me. One, because we're talking about MLK and Martin Luther King. Today is his birthday, and that's why we celebrated on the 15th. Today is the 9th anniversary of my grandfather's passing. So my grandfather is the reason why I'm here in front of you today. There is no George Trice without my grandfather. And I say that literally. I was born Cleve George Trice, Cleve from Cleveland. Yeah, laugh, it's okay. I decided when I was 9 years old that I wanted to get my name changed, and I wanted to honor my grandfather. I talked about honor earlier. So I went from Cleve George Trice to George Wesley Trice and took my grandfather's full name. Part of that was because my grandfather had no boys. My grandfather wanted to adopt me as his grandson, as his only Trice. Luckily, my mom had no other boys, and so I am the line of the Trices as we know. I was the first Trice in 75 years to come to Ames and go to Iowa State. And again, without George Trice, my grandfather, I would not be here. And George Trice III, my son, and Israel Trice, my son, would not be here to carry the name on and continue on with that legacy and that path. In '97, when I first relearned about Jack Trice and his story, I was committed to going to the University of Michigan. I know my wife's watching this live stream and she knows this story, so it's okay. My ex-girlfriend from high school was going to Michigan. University of Michigan was 3.5 hours from home. It was close, it was convenient. When I relearned about Jack, it was my senior year, because initially I was 8 years old when I first learned about Jack Trice. 1988, and I had chicken pox, so I could not come. But my grandfather, my Uncle Nelson, and my cousin Chester, they did come to make that trek to unveil the statue. Didn't really talk about it much after that, and then in 1997, my senior year, my football coach saw in the paper that they had renamed the stadium at Iowa State to Jack Trice Stadium. I took the article home. Ma, do you know anything about this? She said, oh yeah, look at this. She went back into her photo album. She had the Jet magazine from that 1988 year where they talked about the 65-year wrong that was now made right with the statue, and that was the story in the Jet magazine. Stevie Wonder was on the cover, and I don't know what month it was, but if you ever look for it, Stevie was on the cover of that magazine. And so that's when I relearned about it. I called Iowa State and I said, left a message, hey, I'm calling. I think I'm related to this Jack Trice guy. My grandfather was there. Can you get back to me? They called me back and said I was a first cousin twice removed, my grandfather, my mother, and then through me. So that's how, I ended up learning more about it. So I said, hey, I would like to come visit. Committed to Michigan, already done. Went to my mom and said, Mom, I'm going to Iowa. I'm going to see Iowa State. She said, not without me, you're not. I was only 17 at the time. But we came out in February. Yeah, yeah. I'm from Cleveland. We get lake effect snow. Not this cold. My bones hurt. I'm going back to Arizona on Wednesday. But we came in February, and Tom Hill was the provost at the time, and I was with Tom, went into the stadium, and it was Hilton. They were playing. It was a conference game, so it was something big like Saturday night. It was a conference game during this time of year, and they announced me on the big screen, and after that was done, standing ovation, clapping, and I did nothing but be a trice. But what hit me were two things. An usher walked up from the floor and came and sat next to me on the stairs next to my aisle seat, and he played with Jack. And he was still an usher at Iowa State at Hilton. And he sat there for 45 minutes. I have no clue what happened in the game. We won because everyone was happy. But I talked to this gentleman for 45 minutes and missed the game, but it was worth it to learn more about what Jack experienced, how he partnered with Jack in that. Because, you look at what we talked about here today about bringing people together. Jack came here because his football coach brought 6 players here. So Jack was one of those 6. Had the coach gone to Alabama, Roll Tide, not really Roll Tide, but had he gone there, he would be an Alabama elephant. What are they? Crimson Tide? An elephant? I don't get it. Side makes more sense. And so when I left the stadium, I'm in the back of the SUV that was taking us around, and people saw me. I had the window down. I don't know. It's February. I don't know why the window was down, but hands clapping, thumbs up, just the smiles in the people's faces that were there, it made me want to be here. So in the fall of '98, I was a student on campus here. Campus was 75 years ago. My cousin died. I had no path set. I was just here. I just knew it's kind of where I wanted to be, and so that's why I was here. Again, it took me a while, the Van Wilder of Iowa State. But at that time, I didn't have the total weight and pressure of being a student athlete. I was just a student. I could choose what I wanted and who I wanted to be on any given day, unlike a student athlete that's out there putting themselves on the line. So I began to see that because of my last name, I had access and privilege, but I hadn't earned it. I hadn't done anything to get the accolades and get the access that I was getting. Jack, Martin, my grandfather that passed 9 years ago, they did not have that same access. They did not have those same freedoms that I have had in the years that I've been an adult, that I've been able to come and go as I please. Those were the 3 men that I look up to because of what they started, and they paved that path. They started to lay those bricks, and it was cut short because they all died. So their path ended. And now as I retrace their steps, it becomes a journey to find out what their path was and then to forge ahead from that moment. Again, friendlier people than Cleveland, and that's one of the reasons why I looked at that. But I did think that y'all were the nosiest people in the world when I first got here. You all were replaced by BYU, but asking questions, and it was because of the unknown. You didn't know me. One of my roommates graduated with 37 people. There were 37 people in my house at dinner sometimes. And it was just different for me. I'm like, this is just a different kind of thing. This is a different kind of feeling, a different kind of closeness. And I said, friends became family here because people accepted me. I come in town still, and some of those families invite me to dinner. I went to school with their kids, and I'm having dinner with the parents, and the kids aren't there. The parents want to see me more than their own kids. I'm that kind of person. But again, I started on that path. I started with their foundation. And again, I chose Iowa because it was home. It felt like home. But again, different than Jack, where I imagine when Jack landed at the Ames Depot behind Cornbread, I don't think he had the same feeling. And you can tell from his letter and the words that he did not have that same experience and that same feeling coming from Hiram, Ohio, and Cleveland to here. And I told you about this morning, I talked about my speech at the Ames Rotary. George, you were there. And it was called Driven, Not Brave. And the reason why I titled that one those words is because I would not have stepped out on that field in 1923, knowing that they didn't want me there. I would not have done the Selma, I would not have marched like Martin did, knowing that people didn't want me there and doing that. I'm not as brave as those men. I don't have to face those same things every day because they started the path and they paved it for me, where I can start at a place where I have those freedoms, I have that access. And so those men are brave men. I talked about Colin Powell and his essence of leadership speech, and I play this for any team that I manage. I've been with Nationwide for 18 years, and one of the things he says is, you know your team trusts you is if they follow you around the deepest, darkest corner, if not just out of curiosity. It's about that trust. It's about that curiosity. Military, we recognize you all today, brave men and women that protect us and our freedoms. I'm not that brave. Getting there. Sorry. Oh, my thing kind of broke on me. So now I have to wing it for the rest of my speech, which is what I love to do. People that know me, raise your hand, you know how I'm about to do. So that was really what I wanted to get across about the path and about me getting here, about why we are here today. But I also want to touch on something that Eric talked about, and one of the reasons why I feel that it's my duty to continue on. My 9 to 5 is with Nationwide Insurance. My 5 to 9 is my 5 and 10-year-old at the house. And I started a foundation in Jack's name that I do while I'm watching Hallmark with my wife. I know all of the characters. I have my favorites. But that's where I do this work, because I don't get paid to do what I do. I just do it because I want to give back. Because I've been afforded opportunities. It doesn't always have to be treasure. It can be your time. And that's what I give. I give the time, and that's why I'm here today. But why I started the foundation, and Eric, you hit on it about George Floyd, an Iowa Stater that ran track here during the time I was here, was on Facebook and made a post where someone made a post where they were comparing and contrasting Jack's and George's deaths. And I took time to read the post, to get where that person was coming from, to read the comments. And I did not choose my words carefully because I didn't want to. But what I said was, don't ever put those two in the same sentence. And the reason why was because one did something negative to get the attention drawn on him. The outcome was unacceptable, but something wrong was done for that chain of events to happen. Jack was a black man in 1923 playing a game. You look at those things and how he walked out there, those are different reasons for why he did what he did. And that was part of the catalyst. It was during a COVID year. It happened right before we got locked down. So all I could do was watch the news, and I hate the news. The caucus is going down. I'm glad I'm not watching that. I just don't like the news because they normally spin something negative. It's always the negative things for the most part that are there. And social injustice, Black Lives Matter. My 7-year-old, he's 11, he'll be 11 next month, but he was 7 at the time and said, "Daddy, what's Black Lives Matter?" So I had to explain to my son, and my son is mixed. My wife is white, but my son is going to always be black. And I had to explain to him what that means for Black Lives Matter and the history behind that. And it was sad to do that to a 7-year-old. It was too soon. We shouldn't have to have those conversations that early from what they're seeing on TV and not understanding the full brevity of what it is. The next thing that really was the catapult was with my son again. And kids, do you all know who Ryan's World is? Yeah, you do. This little kid makes money. He makes these toys that break in 3 seconds. Kids, cover your ears. They break in 3 seconds, but the kids love them. And I told my son, I am not buying you those things because you only play with one thing out of that mystery box. I said, make your own toys, and then I went to the gym. Came home, my wife said, you need to talk to your son. And I said, why? He said, ask him what he said. So when I left the gym, he talked to Mom, and again, we had the Black Lives Matter conversation. He said, no one's gonna buy my toys because I'm black. Broke my heart. So I went to Facebook Live, and I don't really do that stuff. I have to do it because I have a foundation, but I went on Facebook Live and said, buddy, can you say that again? And I had to tell people that I shouldn't have to have that conversation, and would you buy Izzy's toys if he made them? I showed him the comments, people saying, I'll buy your toys, Izzy. His name's Israel, we call him Izzy. I'll buy your toys. And at that moment is when I knew I had to do better. So I started on Facebook asking friends to say, hey, I want to start a scholarship fund. Will you give me some money? People started sending me money, you know, and I got like $1,000, went and got a website, went and got an LLC, went and found out how to start a nonprofit, so a lot of trial and error. But I took that and I tried to build something better to give back. I've coached kids from 3 to 11 in all sports, and at a certain point in time, you know that you have to pass them over to somebody that is a true coach, that does know that game, or that knowledge, has that knowledge. And so that's why I go to a certain level with kids, and then I pass them on to someone that can teach them that every kid doesn't get a medal. But I say that to talk about the fact that the path was set for me, and I knew at that moment what I needed to do and how I needed to honor people before me, and it was to give my time and my treasure to help. And so as I close today, all I want us to understand is to do better than we did the day before. If you took 9,000 steps yesterday, try to take 9,001. Try to do better. You might not always succeed, but try to do better. And tomorrow, the question I want you to ask people, because MLK Day is every day, and this has nothing to do with Martin Luther King or Jack, but it has to do with humanity and people. Ask somebody, what's the best thing that happened to you today? If you think about it, that question cannot be answered negatively. There is no negative way to answer that question. What's the best thing that happened to you today? Because sometimes you think about it, did you have a bad day, or did you have a bad moment in that day? There are people that are having bad days. You may have had a moment, but what's the best thing that happened to you today? And build the community that way, because community, family, and education are important. Thank you.